Assalamualaikum. Before we go deeper into this topic about the carbon recovery from biomass in fluidized bed, I want to share with you about the introduction, how the process and what is the benefit we can get from this carbon recovery in biomass in a fluidized bed. So, for this carbon recovery, from a biomass influenced bed, it is aimed to extract the utilized carbon from biomass material is an efficient and sustainable manner. So biomass, we know that biomass is contain culture residue like wood chip, energy crops that contain the culture, and we use the nature for this carbon recovery. So from this carbon recovery from a biomass bed, we can know that biomass can also give us to save the world in a greener future, because we can reduce the product of chemical like oil, like the chemical process. So from we exchange the chemical process with the biomass, like the nature residue. So it also can improve the soil quality, while bio oil can be used as a renewable fuel or for making the others sustain. So during the process, the biomass is also exposed to control the oxygen level, and which lead to the release of volatile component such as gases and water. We call it water vapors. That is DFB gasification. So this can also help us to cleaning the world and be the greener future.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And now I would like to present about the flowchart of the process. This is flowchart of the process where the carbon recovery from the biomass in the fluidized bed. Now I will tell you all the function in this flowchart. There are 4 sections, and the first section is dual fluidized bed gasification section. In this section, it has 2 containers, which is combustor container and gasifier container. Combustor container will burning the char produced by the gasifier with the presence of the oxygen. Flue gas will exit from the combustor, and it also transfers to the heat to the gasifier. Next, it is gasifier container. It will produce char and raw gas or syngas by converting the fuel into fuel gases with the presence of heat and steam. Next is gas cleaning section. This section also has 2 containers, which is filter container and tar separation container. Filter container will filter the raw gas produced from the gasifier and produce the fly ash. This fly ash will be fed to the combustor. Tar separation container will separate the product with a mixture of RME and produce tar and RME. This product also will be fed to the combustor. Next is upgrading section. This section also has 2 containers, which is reformer container and water gas shift container. Reformer container will reform the gas with the presence of cold gas and steam. Water gas shift container will adjust the ratio of the composition of gas to get the desired gas. Next is carbon dioxide separation. This container will separate the carbon dioxide from the product, whether the product is flue gas or syngas. Lastly, it is a synthesis section. This section will synthesis of the desired product above the atmospheric pressure.
On the next part, we will discuss about the process of carbon recovery from biomass, which will undergo several sections before the product will be produced. This section including DFB gasification section, gas cleaning section, upgrading section, and lastly, synthesis section. As the initiating, the steam and biomass will be inserted into the gasifier section, which will produce coal that will be transferred into the combustor and raw gas as the raw product. The coal produced then will be burned in the presence of oxygen in the combustor to produce energy in terms of heat and be used for production of the raw gas in the gasifier. The combustor will also produce flue gas that can be used again in the combustor as a fuel before going into the CO2 separation process. On the next part, the produced raw gas then will enter the gas cleaning chamber, which contain filter and tar separation section. The raw gas will enter filter section producing fly ash as the byproduct and syngas as the main product, which will then enter the tar separation section. These fly ashes will then be used in the combustor if there were lack of energy produced from burning of coal. In the tar separation chamber, which were used to separate tar from the gas, the certain amount of RME were used to react with the gas, which will then produce a mixture of tar and RME byproduct and syngas as the main product, which will then enter the upgrading section. Tar and RME produced can be used as a fuel if there was shortage of energy in the combustion process, which also can be used to produce electricity for the reformer in case of lack of electrical energy. As the syngas enter the upgrading chamber, it will undergo two processes known as reformer and WGS. As the gas enter the reformer, conversion of process occurs, which will function in producing H2 and CO from the hydrocarbon, which will make the composition of the product produced only contains these two compounds. The product would then enter another section known as WGS reactor or water gas shift reactor. It was used to adjust the ratio of CO2 produced depending on our desired product. The syngas then will flow out of the upgrading chamber to undergo one last process before the product will be synthesis, which is CO2 separation that will make all the CO2 product will leave the syngas. And on the final chamber, which is the synthesis chamber, the syngas will then flow into and will be converted into our desired product, which is in our case, carbon as our final and our desired product.
There were several issues relating to the dual fluidized bed DFB machine, which are highly cost, less efficient, and complex setup. DFB is a machine that mostly relies on combustion process and needs a huge quantity of energy and fuel to maximize the product. As example, 0.7 megajoule per kilogram O2, which is 200 kilowatt-hour per ton, was the amount of the electrical energy that required to complete the process. When highly energy used, greater amount of fuel is needed, even the yield of the product in quite small quantities. The fuel can be obtained by buying from the fuel supplier in a tremendous amount and mostly expensive for all types of fuel. Then, the high cost of maintenance because certain components in the machine have short lifespan. Some of them are affordable but mostly are heavily in price and need to be replaced immediately to avoid severe damage to the machine. That shows how costly this machine is to get the product. It should be understood and considered when it comes to the combustion process. This means that the production of byproducts must occur even in small quantities. For example, flue gas, flying ash, and tar. More and more byproducts are produced, causing the fuel used to produce byproducts to be used instead of the desired product. This also causes a loss of fuel and energy used in carrying out the process, because only a small amount of the desired product is produced. With that, this machine is less efficient based on the reason that have been stated. And an efficient machine refers to a machine that maximizes the product produced despite saving in terms of fuel and energy use. Finally, the complex system has become the last issue for this machine because it will lead to other problems. This machine is divided into 4 parts, which are the FV gasification section, gas cleaning section, gas upgrading section, and synthesis section. When there is damage to one of those parts, it will necessarily affect the process, or the process needs to be delayed for the repair work to be carried out. This will waste time and reduce the productivity of the machine. In addition, skilled workers and enough are required to make the process run smoothly. This is because a certain number of workers are required to monitor to ensure that no problems occur throughout the process, and if there is a lack of one worker, the damage that occurs may not be noticed. Unskilled workers can also disrupt the process if they make a mistake in operating the machine or the quantity of material used. Therefore, the use of simpler machines is more useful and can avoid this kind of thing from happening.
Problem must have a solution. For this case, we found the best way to obtain carbon from biomass, which is enzymatic hydrolysis of starch from microalgae. Enzymatic hydrolysis of starch requires the activity of several enzymes, such as alpha amylase, beta amylase, isoamylase, and glucoamylase. The enzymatic hydrolysis of starch is carried out at elevated temperature, and it is divided into 3 steps, which are starch gelatinization, liquefaction, and saccharification. Starch gelatinization and liquefaction involve breaking down of starch granules into gelatinous suspension at 105 degrees Celsius, followed by the converting of gelatinous starch into oligosaccharide at 95 degrees Celsius by using thermostable alpha amylase as the enzyme. Saccharification is the conversion process of oligosaccharide into primary glucose. Thus, we obtain carbon in terms of glucose. The enzymatic hydrolysis of starch is the best way to obtain carbon from biomass. This is because the enzymatic hydrolysis of starch is a low energy and low temperature process. Compared to dual fluidized bed, enzymatic hydrolysis of starch only need 105 degrees Celsius to complete the reaction, while dual fluidized bed technique need 800 degrees Celsius to complete the reaction. In addition, enzymatic hydrolysis of starch produce high yield of the main product, which is glucose, and only low yield of byproducts such as maltose, while dual fluidized bed technique produce high yield of the main product, which is carbon, and also produce high yield of the byproduct such as tar. Why do we use microalgae as the biomass source? This is because microalgae serve as non-food feedstock, which does not compromises our food security. In addition, microalgae grow in aquatic habitat and thereby do not compete with food crops on agricultural land and do not cause deforestation and do not pollute our environment.